Clinical Trials for MedTech.
Research, clinical trials, ethics approvals. Ooh, scary stuff, isn't it? Confusing, expensive, takes years. Well, I'm going to try and demystify some of the stuff about evidence and clinical trials for digital health technologies in the next 10 or so minutes. So my name is Jack Halligan. I'm one of the co-founders of Prova Health. We generate evidence, run clinical trials for digital health companies. So mainly digital health software as a medical device, software that does not qualify as a medical device, as opposed to physical devices, although we do some work with physical devices. The quickest way to think of us is as a digital health CRO. So why do I need evidence, you might be asking yourself. Who do I need to give this evidence to? Who do I know the right person is? What do I present them to? What do I present? When do I present it to get regulatory approval or reimbursement? So the important thing to note is that evidence starts at the very beginning, as the gentleman from Implant Data before me pointed out. To develop a better product, early and often, be testing it with your end users early and often, as many times as you can to get to a good product. For regulatory approval, if you qualify as a medical device, you will need a minimum standard of evidence to prove you're safe and you have efficacy of your solution. To get reimbursement, another standard of evidence, again, to convince payers to pay for your solution. And also, increasingly, to prove value to your potential investors. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So this is a study from a couple of years ago by Rock Health, where they looked at about 250 of the top digital health startups in the US. At that time, so they looked at the number of regulatory filings and the number of publicly registered clinical trials. And they found that 44% of the top digital health companies at that time had no publicly available evidence to back up the claims of the products that they made on their website. This was back in a time when pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, economic conditions were better. During COVID, solutions were getting purchased that needed to be purchased to facilitate telemedicine and a bunch of other things. Things have changed. So this is from the end of 2023, about 10 months ago, a study done by GSR Ventures, a global VC firm. They spoke to 50 health tech VCs who said that on the bottom right-hand side, you'll see that 79% said that clinical evidence and trials was either important or very important for choosing to invest in a company. Also, we're seeing that payers and other bodies are clarifying requirements. NICE in the UK, slowly but surely, they've put out their evidence standard frameworks for digital health technologies a couple of years ago. They've also recently introduced the Innovative Device Access Pathway. It's moving slowly, but things are picking up. We've also seen in Germany, you'll be aware of the DVG, which has given statutory coverage for DiGA, or digital health applications in Germany. After a slow start, prescriptions of those digital therapeutics are picking up. And then we've seen the same in France, so adopting something very similar to the DVG in Germany quite recently. So what evidence do I need? Simple answer is, it depends. Complicated answer also. So if your solution qualifies as a medical device, you will need to get regulatory approval. Sounds obvious. But understanding your intended use case, your intended use, first of all, to understand whether you're a medical device is something that companies can do quite poorly. So first, to understand if you're a medical device or not. You'll need to do 3 things if you qualify as a medical device. Broadly the same for Europe, US, and most countries in the world. So show clinical association. Does your solution actually solve a real-world problem? It isn't just a cool idea like the gentleman before me was talking about from Implant Data. Is it solving a real-world problem? Can you connect what your solution does to solving a problem in healthcare? Does it have analytical performance? Do the inputs to your technology match the expected outputs? and clinical performance. The solution provides clinically relevant data when tested with target users in the target environment. So if they're clinician users, testing it with a simple number of clinicians in the target environment to show that it's not making mistakes and that it's producing ballpark the results that you're aiming for. And that is the relatively straightforward evidence that you will need to get regulatory approval. But it's almost always not sufficient enough for a digital health solution to just have evidence that satisfies the regulators. You will need to also generate evidence to demonstrate the value of your solution to the people who are ultimately going to use it or to buy it. So the way we think about it is there are 4 different types of value that you can show for a digital health solution. The first, showing the solution has a measurable impact on clinical outcomes. This isn't relevant for all digital health solutions. Some don't qualify as a medical device and actually aren't designed to have an impact on clinical outcomes. Some, however, do, and if this is important, you should be thinking about it. This typically requires quite a large clinical trial. You might have to have randomization. You might have to have a very large prospective real-world evidence study. So it can be quite difficult and expensive to demonstrate a statistically significant impact on the outcomes you're aiming for. Financial value, increasingly important in the current economic climate. Can you show this either through option 1 with the clinical outcomes showing it has an impact on quality adjusted life years, which a lot of payers will look at. But try and understand, what do the people who are paying for your solution, your intended customers, what do they want to see in terms of evidence? What do NICE want to see in the UK? What do integrated care boards want to see in the UK? What do the CMS want to see in the US? What do sick funds in Germany want to see? Go out and speak to those people. Try and understand what evidence they want. Try and look at analogous technologies in those countries. Look at their published evidence. What have they shown? Operational value, and I'll talk to a case study about this, but ties very closely to financial value. Can you show resource savings? There are a lot of very good companies out there that can help you with health economics evaluations and showing whether it has an operational impact on your customers. This can be sufficient alone, just showing that it saves nursing time, doctor time, it reduces waiting lists. And then finally, experience value. For some payers, this will be extremely important. So showing that patients engage with the technology, they like it, they use it. If you're selling into an employee benefit scheme in the US, or if you're selling to a private payer in the US, and they're insuring millions of people and adding a digital health solution that's patient-facing on top of that, they want to know that their customers are going to use it, because if they're using technology that they're giving to them, they're going to stay as a customer of that insurance company. And this is relatively straightforward to do, but some companies are quite poor at it. Just surveys, early and often, surveys, interviews, just getting evidence that people use it and that people like your solution. 2 minutes. So what do we do very quickly before I finish? So we provide an end-to-end service for clinical trials. That could include all or a couple of steps of what I'll show now. So study design, actually developing research protocols, consent forms, information sheets, case report forms, all of that boring stuff that you need to run a clinical trial. We do ethics approval, so we'd submit all of that documents to the relevant body to get ethics approval. Recruitment, we're a clinician-led company. We're very good at clinician recruitment. We also do patient recruitment, either from the site that your technology is being used at, or sometimes through patient advocacy groups as well. Study delivery, so actually managing all of the research governance that you need to do throughout the study. Data analysis and visualization, and also publication. So we do medical writing services as well, writing up abstracts or manuscripts for publication in medical journals at the end of those projects. I will very quickly go through one project that we did earlier in the year. This is actually an example of a solution that's not even qualified as a medical device. It's from a company that's called Accurex. If you're from the UK, you'll definitely know who they are. If you're not, you probably won't. They're used by 98% of GP practices in the UK. What they do is very simply solve communication issues in primary care. They allow primary care practices to send SMSs for various reasons to their patient base. They're a relatively young company, but already used in 98% of practices. They introduced a new feature called Self-Book, which just allows people to book appointments at a time of their choosing. I know this sounds like a super simple technology, but you've no idea how far behind some primary care practices in the UK are. But it was a new feature that they introduced. It was being used at 14 GP practices in the UK. And what we did was we combined a qualitative evaluation where we surveyed about 1,400 patients that were using the technology. We interviewed some patients and we interviewed some people from primary care practices where it was being used, combined it with a health economics analysis that tried to show for each of these primary care practices, how much do we think we're saving each year by people not having to pick up the phone at 8:30 in the morning to 100 people calling in for appointments. If you've worked in a GP practice in the UK, you'll know or tried to get an appointment for a GP in the UK, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. This was completed in the space of 4 or 5 months, and the reason Acurex came to us to run the project is that they had a renewal of a national contract with the NHS coming up, and they used that to inform the conversation. I've just looked at the clock and it's minus in the red. So I am going to wrap up there. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.